I'm not afraid to talk salaries. Just give folks an idea, right? I went from making around 55,000 a year to a
Okay.
little over 140 in a 2 year period.
Wow.
Now there was a lot of things that had to line up in order to make that happen. There's three career jobs. I probably got a dozen different IT security certifications in a 2 year period. I tell everybody, just like get to six figures. Figure out what do whatever it takes to get to six figures. Work your 60, 70 hour weeks. You know, finish your education, get a master's degree, whatever the requirements are that are written on paper that everybody says you got to do.
Yeah.
I know it can be hard sometimes, but like figure out how to go get those requirements.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Custom Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Baines. As always, we got another great episode for you guys today. We got a great guest by the name of Jeremiah Walker. He is the director of capture management at Boecore, and he's going to talk to us about all things cybersecurity and how he became an expert in this field and how you can too. Before we get started, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button below if you're watching this on YouTube. Also, make sure you follow us on all social media platforms at Custom Journeys. That's CUSTEMJOURNEYS. Don't want to waste any more time. Let's go ahead and jump into it. Mr. Jeremiah Walker, how's it going, man? How you
All
doing?
right. Hey, thanks for having me on, Andrew. That was a great intro. You seem like you've done a few of these, so right
I,
on.
I got a few of them under my belt, I
Right.
must say. But how you doing, man? Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, no, I'm doing great. And thank you for reaching out. Just for the audience here, I want to say that you reached out to me on LinkedIn. You saw that we had an apprenticeship program at the company I work for, Boecore, and I just thought it was really great that you were looking to say, hey, what's an opportunity that I can sort of introduce my audience to, a way to get into this cybersecurity career field. It's been hot for a minute, and a lot of folks have been trying to, run into the same problem we always do in the beginning of our careers, right? Like I see these jobs, they look great, they're saying they're entry level, but then there's all these hoops I got to jump through. I want to have like 3 to 5 years experience and some kind of like fancy programming language I never heard of, and I don't like words on the resume on the application I never heard of. Like, what's all that about? And apprenticeships and internships are a good way to um, sort of get past that, right? Like get that initial experience where you're still young and not necessarily young in age, but young in the career field, right? So anyway, I just want to say I appreciate you reaching out, and I definitely appreciate what you're doing here for people.
Hey man,
So
I appreciate that.
yeah,
You know the struggle of like seeing that entry level
oh yeah,
role and it's
oh
like
yeah,
3 to 5 years experience. Hey, like where they do that at? Like what is going on? Like, but it's a whole nother
right,
thing. We'll have to discuss at some point.
right.
But yeah, man, the power of LinkedIn. I'm always looking for opportunities and guests and things of that nature. So I appreciate you being so willing to hop on the mic and talk to the people about how they can be successful, how they can get into cybersecurity and all that good stuff. So let's go ahead and jump into it, man.
Okay.
I mentioned that you're the director of capture management at Boecore. What exactly does that mean? Like, tell the people, what do you
Right.
do on a day to day? What exactly do you do in your current job at Boecore?
So that is a good question, right? Me and my VP, we joke all the times that like, nobody in high school is like, you ask, what do you want to do when you grow up? Nobody says, I want to be a capture manager for a defense contractor, right? But it's a real job, and it's a good job. Capture management is basically the easiest way to think about it is a business to government sales executive, right? So, um, typically when you're doing like B2B, B2B meaning business to business, or B2C, business to customer sales, usually you'll have a sales rep, and they can make the sale in a fairly quick basis. Like if you go into a store, you're going to meet a sales rep, they'll sell you a shirt in 5 minutes, right?
Hmm.
You go business to business, those are usually a little bit longer sales cycles, weeks, months, maybe. With the government does everything slowly. For us, a typical sales cycle will be anywhere from a year to 18 months.
Wow.
So my job as a capture manager is to make sure that we as a company, again, a company I work for is Boecore. So for my job is make sure that Boecore stays on top of that sales process for that entire 1 year to 18-month period, basically.
Okay.
So that's everything from, engaging with the customer, which is usually a government representative, all the way to the point where we're submitting a proposal, doing contract negotiations, getting contracts written, and everything like that on the backside, price
Okay.
negotiations, all of that.
Wow. No, I mean that's a
Yeah.
lengthy life cycle. So I'd imagine like you're doing like a lot of like responding to RFPs and things of that nature
Oh yeah.
too.
Oh yeah. We
Oh
do a
God.
lot of proposals, a lot of so RFPs, requests for proposal, RFIs, requests for information. We do a lot of responses to those. We do a lot of industry contacts, industry engagements, which are trade shows, things of that nature. Um, Industry days, which is basically where the government will be like, hey, we want to get a lot of our top people together with a lot of the top people from the defense. They call it the defense industrial base. So basically, our industry is all the defense contractors, right? Collectively,
Yeah.
we're called the defense industrial base. So, senior government folks will get together at the defense industrial base. They'll say, here's what we're looking at for the next 4 to 5 years. Here's what you want you guys to do. Go build, go sell, right? And that's kind of how that whole process works. So yeah, we do a lot of that type of work. Absolutely.
Nice. You have a really impressive technical background. I didn't say
Right.
it earlier, but like senior staff systems engineer, cybersecurity product development lead. So have you
Right.
kind of moved
Right.
from like the technical space into more like the business space then?
Yeah, so I can definitely talk about that. So, I started out. I'm a Air Force veteran. I did 15 years, 2001 to 2016, and I started out in medical equipment repair, which is like like a fun career field, right? But it doesn't have a whole lot of jobs on the outside. It's like one of those things nobody's ever really heard of. And so, in that career field, didn't have a path to. At the time, it didn't have like a bachelor's degree that was associated with it.
Okay.
I was really focused on like education. I wanted to make sure during my time in the military that I got some educational credentials. So I wanted to go on for a business degree instead. So I got a business degree, medical equipment repair. Got out of the Air Force. The first time I got out of the Air Force, I came off of active duty in 2000, late 2007, early 2008. I know you're a young guy, so you might not remember what was going on during that time, but
I
like
remember the
two,
recession, man. I'm not that
yeah,
young.
you know,
I
so, so 2008, it was like the world was ending. It was like impossible to find a job, right? So, so I was not able to find a job in any sort of business capacity in 2008. So what I did instead was join the National Guard and went into National Guard as a secure network technician. So that was like, so the short version is basically there's two phone networks that exist with at least two that I know of, right? That exist within the United States. One is what we call the Plano telephone system, which is what everybody's like familiar with. So that's largely been replaced these days by wireless, right? Um,
yeah. So that's the
but
old
right
school
next to that,
lines that the old school telephone lines that you
yeah,
see on the side of the
yeah, like the
road.
rotary dial, yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
pick up,
yeah.
you pick up the phone and all that. That's what we call POTS, right? And then right alongside those lines, there's a what we call the fence red switch network, and so that is basically like the communications network that our military, Department of Homeland Security, the president, the State Department, that's what they use when they do like secure telecommunications.
Mm,
Um, it's basically like unhackable from the regular telephone system. And so, when you watch all those TV shows and movies where they're talking about, are you on a secure line? Are you on a secure line?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
We all joke because you can't get on a secure line, like from the outside. Like you got to be in a like a secure environment, like on a military base or somewhere to get onto a secure line. But
Okay.
it's kind of funny. So you see that in TV shows, but yeah, I mean, it was literally like I had a phone that it's the same phone that sits on the president's desk, right? Um, so I did that job for until like 2015, and so like between like 2008, like in the recession, and 2015, I was kind of in like a little bit of like a career malaise, right? I didn't really know
Yeah.
like how careers worked. I didn't have a good mentor, anything like that. Um, but one of the things that happened was the DoD came along and said, hey, if you want to do this IT work, you have to get like some specific certifications. There's actually, anytime the DoD mandates you do something, they put out a regulation or a manual. And so there's this thing called the DoD 8570 manual, and it's basically like all the certifications that you have to get in order to do
Mm.
your job, right? And it's a bunch. like this thing is a beast. And so
Are these
so
different
I
from
kind
like
of get
the Oh, I'm sorry to cut you off. Are these different from like the CISP, Security Plus?
No, no, no. So it's weird. So I encourage anybody who's interested in cybersecurity, and who's especially if you're interested in working with the federal government or state governments or whatever, to go look this up. But it's just basically a table, and it basically says for you to operate at a certain level of experience or qualification or essentially pay, right? Like that's what
Yeah.
we're kind of getting at, right?
Yeah.
You need to have this certification. And certifications for the most part are industry certifications. So like you can go to CompTIA and get, like one of the most popular ones is Security Plus, right? You can go to CompTIA, a commercial organization, and get your Security Plus. You don't have to do that through the military.
Okay.
But the military was looking at these commercial organizations and saying, hey, build us a group of certifications that help meet our needs on the DoD side from a
Gotcha.
cybersecurity perspective. So so I was sitting there. I remember like it was like 2011, 2012. Um, I had been doing a job for a little bit, and then suddenly I had to go get the certification, and I never done anything like this. So I was like scared. Right? I was scared in my mind. I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. And I'm a pretty smart guy, but not necessarily, I'm smart, but I'm not a good test taker. It kind of deals, right? And I just never done anything like that. So I went and I took the first one, did real good on it, and I was sitting there trying to figure out what to do next in my career, and I was like, man, why don't I just get like more of these certifications? It seemed to be like the more senior people have more of these certifications.
Mm.
So let me go do that. Um, and I did a lot of that. I got like at one point I had over 25 different IT or security certifications. I kind of went wild with it, before
Dang.
the call, where I tell you how I go wild with stuff, like with this whole setup, and the video setup and everything like that. So that was like, that was kind of how I got to be, a fairly senior cybersecurity person, just cranking out certifications, cranking out education,
Okay.
applying for new jobs, and just seeing what happened.
That makes sense. Like 2015 is when you stopped the telecommunications work, and then you kind of switched over to.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so within 7 years, you've kind of gone from there to now like senior level cybersecurity, and then even now into like a
It
director.
was it was actually shorter than that. I
Oh
went
wow.
from, I'm not afraid to talk salaries, just give folks an idea, right? I went from making around 55,000 a year to
Okay.
a little over 140 in a 2-year period.
Wow.
Now there was a lot of things that had to line up in order to make that happen. There's 3 career jobs. I probably got a dozen different IT security certifications in a 2-year period. I finished my master's degree, and then I just got really, really lucky. I had been training on Splunk, which is just a data analytics platform, really common in financial services and cybersecurity.
Okay.
And so I was kind of like doing all this stuff on the commercial side, and
Yeah.
DoD decided, like right at the same time, it's like, hey, we really want some of those analytics inside of our environment, right? We want people who have that analytics background to come work for us on the cybersecurity side. So, I got this great job going in, and one of my first jobs coming back into DoD contracting as a senior person was I was a security operations architect, helping build out the first security operations center for the global positioning system, GPS,
Okay.
satellites, right? So like that's a really cool thing to be able to put on your resume and be like, hey, I'm out here helping secure GPS, right?
Yeah.
And so there was another company who had kind of gotten the beginnings of it going, and then my team went in and developed a 24/7 operations environment around that, and they just kind of been cranking their way at it ever since then.
Man. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. There's a lot. I got a lot of questions for you.
Right.
You definitely went ham on the certifications. 25 certs
Right.
and a master's degree, like that's a
Right.
lot. But I mean, it speaks to your hunger at the time and your willingness to do like whatever it took to. You kind of saw like a vision, like, hey, you want more. You didn't have a mentor at the time, so you're like, yo, you noticed, you kind of read the room, you observed, hey, these guys that are in these senior level positions are they have a lot of certs, so that's one of the things in the equation that you need. Let's talk about that 2 year jump though. You where you went from 55,000 to 140,000. And reason being, because a lot of people like inflation is high.
Oh,
Some
sure.
people, if they've been at the same company, like their salaries are probably stagnant, and they're like, "Yo, I want something more. I want a better life for me and for my family." What are some? And you kind of mentioned some of the different things that were at hand, like the timing, the alignment worked out good in your favor, the certifications, your master's degree. If you had to pick a few key factors that helped you go from 55,000 to 140,000 in 2 years, if you were recommending somebody else to like do that same salary jump, what would you kind of recommend? Is it jumping from employer to employer? Is it getting certain certifications? What would it be?
You mentioned something early. You mentioned mentorship, and like I gotta be honest. Like I never placed like a big value on that in the beginning, and I was wrong. I was wrong for not doing that. I would say
Yeah.
the biggest factor for me, honestly, was meeting people who had done it, especially people who look like me. Like defense industrial base, especially the senior technical, senior business leader roles. There's not a lot of African American men in those positions. Um, but I had a couple of guys I met. I'll give them a shout out. KJ, I can't remember KJ's first name. Now I feel bad. Uh, Johnson. So I remember last name Johnson. And then my other buddy Jermaine Langston. There is two African American guys about my age, really, really focused on their education, really, really focused on their certifications. They both had different approaches. Like KJ, he went out and got a doctorate in business. He really wanted
Wow.
to work for Microsoft. He applied to Microsoft 65 different times, he told me, before they gave him a spot. And then he had, as soon as they gave him an option, it was like somewhere he didn't want to live. It was like, Cleveland or something like that, right? And he was like,
Yeah.
but he was like, he's like, if that's where they got a job and Microsoft is saying I can go, I'm gonna go. And so he packed up ship and moved to Cleveland to go take his job
Wow.
and with Microsoft. And then my other buddy Jermaine, he was he had the opposite. He was kind of like, man, forget about the degree, the education. He's like, I got a bachelor's degree from a no-name school. I don't care. Like, I'm just going to crank out these certifications. He went for the Cisco Certified Internet Network Engineer, CCIE. At the time, it was pretty much the hardest certification that you could do. For a lot of folks, it took them anywhere from 2 to 4 years just to do the certification, or 2 to 4 years, sorry,
Okay.
just to like do the certification. That was after they had to do all these other like certifications to get them to the point that they were ready to take this ultimate certification, right? And so he was like, I'm just going to focus on that, and got really big into the certification game. I don't know what those guys are doing, what they're doing now. I know they're doing better than I am financially, but that's okay. Like I'm good where I'm at, right? But
Yeah.
it was just so to answer your question. I know I took a long way to get there, but the answer to your question is, do it like what you're doing, right? Um, um, you know, getting getting people around you who've done what you've done, asking them how they've done it, giving them examples, giving them proof, right? Say, hey, like I don't have any special advantages that you don't. Um, I have one friend that I call said I was a mentor to him, but not really. I mean, he kind of went ham too. The guy's name is Ryan Dozier. He went like I had like a list of here's all the certifications that I think you should maybe get started with, right? A lot of guys, I give them that list, and they'd be like, they take them like 18 months, 2 years. They'd be dragging their feet, not really doing anything with it.
Yeah.
He like crushed the whole list in like 6 months. Like, and
Dang.
then went into a master's program. He's got way more certs than I do now. Because he went through SANS, which is like considered the top cybersecurity school for like practitioners, right? People who are hands-on. He
Yeah.
went through their entire program, and then coming out of that, he got accepted to John Hopkins, and he's doing a second master's, like right behind his first master's, and again, he's
Killing it.
killing it, right? Another young African American guy, right? And so, like, just being around that energy, just talking to people, being engaged with people who are out there trying to do it, that's really what's going to get you over the hump, because it's no matter what path that's whether it's certifications, whether it's education, whether it's trying to go out and grind a whole bunch of experience, starting a business,
Yeah.
you're going to hit a point where it's going to feel really hard. And if you don't have, oh, and the other thing I would add, my wife is like my greatest cheerleader. Like, she has been like super supportive the entire time that I've been working. So that's another
Nice.
component, right? Having people that like have done it before and can show you the way, and then having people behind you who are motivating you and pushing you. Because you're gonna hit a point where it's like, man, this is hard. I don't know if it's worth it. Like,
Yeah.
and just having that support network and having those people that inspire you is going to be the biggest factor. For the practical things, if you're early in your career, don't be afraid to jump. Like, there's, as far as I'm concerned, for the first 5 to 10 years of your job, there's no such thing as a job hopper, right? Like, do what you
Mm.
got to do to get ahead. I tell everybody, just, like, get to six figures, get to, like, go out there and crush it, figure out do whatever it takes to get to six figures, work your 60, 70-hour weeks, finish your education, get a master's degree, whatever the requirements are that are written on paper that everybody says you got to do.
Yeah.
I know it can be hard sometimes, but like, figure out how to go get those requirements, right? And then put in that work. And then after that, you have a lot more options. What I try to tell people is you got to separate your job from your career. And, you want in the beginning to be focused on getting a good job, like to get the job that pays well or whatever, and then once you've established yourself as a working professional, is making a good income or whatever, then like the career options start to open up. You start looking at
Mm.
mentoring, different networking events and things like of that nature. But in the beginning, it's really just hustle, man. You just got to put in the hours. That's really
Gotcha.
it, and take some risks. But it's. I don't want to make it more complicated than it is. Whatever those applications say to do, go do as much of it as you possibly can. And if the first person says no, who cares? Keep applying. Keep applying to that company. Keep applying to other companies. I know I'm talking a lot, man. I got one more point.
No, this is good. This is
So,
good. Keep at
right.
it.
So during COVID, right? I had a point where I was working for this great company. We were on a contract. Contract was ending. I didn't know like what my future with the company was like, and I was afraid because we're in the middle of a pandemic, right? So I had no idea what the work environment was going to be like. So one night I'm sitting here. I'm an established security professional. I've been doing this for like over 10 years at this point. I still came home on a Thursday night, and I worked from 5 o'clock in the evening to 1 o'clock in the morning. And I must have put in like 60 or 70 applications at different companies, right?
Mm.
I was networking with people, had been networking up to that point, and it just so happened one of my applications landed on the desk of somebody who I've been networking with, right? And when it was basically like within a week, I had a new job, you know, and so, a lot of people that you'll get discouraged when, oh, I put in all these applications, I didn't get anything, or I'm doing all this networking, and it's not getting anything. And to me, I'm like, you got to do all of it. You can't just
Yeah.
do one or other. You kind of got to do all of it. And that's why it's so important to have a good network behind you.
Yeah, no, that last point is so critical because I think I, I don't know, especially like early career professionals. I think they have the assumption that like, yo, I got my college degree, now this just opens up the entire world of
No,
opportunity. So when I applied to this job
no,
as a college graduate,
no.
I should get it because I have a degree now. And for the longest, I think that's kind of like the way the system was set up, where it was like you get a college degree, the world is your oyster. But quickly we learned it's like, yo, it's not how it works, and
It's not.
everything is a people business now. So if you can meet somebody who can give you a way in, and so that means going to networking events,
Mhm.
conferences, meetups, um, Zoom events, whatever the case is, it just makes your life so much easier, whether you're like a business person or job seeker, whatever the case may be. So I'm glad that you mentioned that because I mean it's you have to, like you said, you have to attack it from different angles. It's no one magic bullet that just solves your career needs and you're set for life. So
Yeah,
and then even
absolutely.
being a senior established professional, like it's still like it's the work doesn't stop just because you get to a certain amount of experience or whatever the case may be. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Um, mentoring is definitely huge. So I'm glad you mentioned that as well. You mentioned that you gave a mentee or a person a list of like certifications, like, hey, knock these out. And he
Right.
knocked them out in like 6 months. Couple of questions about certifications. The first one, if you had to pick, I'm not gonna say one. Give me your top three certifications for somebody who is looking to get into cybersecurity. Which three? If you had to pick three, because I know y'all got like 40,
Yeah,
50,
it's
whatever.
over 100. There's over 100 you could feasibly
Okay,
do.
that's ridiculous.
Um,
But give me your top three that you would recommend if you're giving somebody certs to go get tomorrow.
oh, that's such a hard question, and I will tell you why. Um, cybersecurity is full of nerds, man. And if nerds do anything, we love to argue about some stuff, right? Like, um, and
So somebody in the
so no
comments
matter
is gonna be
what, no
like,
matter what I say, I'm gonna get some hate from some people, right? So that just is what it is, right?
yeah,
Um, the reality is the best piece of paper you can get um, is is uh, um, is a college degree from a top institution. I mean, that hasn't changed.
okay,
So that's probably the if so. I say that to say if you're having to choose, um, that would be the path that I would choose first over everything else. With that said, that's not the question you asked, right? So I'm gonna answer the question you asked. Within the DoD environment, the most influential, the most important is probably Security Plus. It's the one that everybody starts with. It's a gatekeeper certification. Basically, it's basically like um, folks within the defense, and the reason for it is I kind of alluded to it earlier, is because of the DoD 8570, right? The Security Plus covers the most boxes in those tables, and so the Air Force and a couple of the other services have actually put it on their favored certifications list because it's like you pay your $400 or $500, who knows how much it is anymore, and you go to a class, you take the cert, and it's kind of like you met that first gate basically.
okay,
From there, I tend to push people towards the CISSP, especially if they're a veteran. Typically, if you're a veteran, you've worked anywhere near a computer. You've met enough requirements to like uh, sit for the CISSP. The CISSP is targeted towards any industry professionals with 5+ years of information security experience. But because the DoD works with secure stuff all the time, like you just almost by default, like I said, if you're working anywhere near computers, you're learning about encryption, you're learning about physical security, you're learning about all these things that are so important for security, all around
mm,
security. And so it to me, it's just like it doesn't make sense to not like go and get. So that's like so Security Plus is like the gatekeeper certification for your entry level jobs. CISSP is like your gatekeeper certification for the mid, and I would say like the beginning of senior level jobs. Once you get to the senior level jobs, what really matters is the quality of your work experience and who you know. Like
okay,
all the certifications and all that. I actually kind of let most of my certifications go because I started to realize that past a certain point, they actually have this weird effect of where they kind of start working against you for some weird reason.
mm,
Like people are just kind of like, oh, like the best you got to offer is you got a bunch of pieces of paper that say something. Like instead they want to know what have you done,
okay,
and who do I know that knows you that can verify that you're any good, right? Those are more of the questions they start asking at the
yeah,
senior levels.
okay. Man, no, that's good to know. I actually know a guy. He is working on getting his Security Plus certification now.
Right.
And I think I don't know if he has a college degree already, but I'm starting to notice like, I've seen it even like in the software engineering space where a lot of, I don't know if it's CompTIA or like different organizations, edX, there's a lot of different companies that are partnering with colleges now to like offer different like boot camp
Hmm.
certifications and things like that. So I think that's kind of what he's going through at the moment. But
Right.
thanks for breaking that down because I was looking at the list and I found a website that listed like the top 20 certifications you should get. And I'm like, yo, 20? Like, where do you
Yeah,
start with
it's
this?
kind of wild. And like I said, nerds go to nerd, right? So they get a lot of hate around this, but the two certifications I named, the big knock against them is that they're not hands-on certifications, right? So
Okay.
like people who really favor those hands-on technical certifications, I think that's great. But if you're talking about like just from like I need a job perspective,
Yeah.
get the two that I recommend.
Okay.
Like, get those gatekeeper, get the gatekeeper certifications, right?
So
And then
Security
once you
Plus
got
and
the job, get something related to whatever equipment you're working with, whatever tools you're working with,
all
for
right.
sure.
The top two, Security Plus and CISP.
CISSP, Certified Information System Security Professional. Ah, that's a
Yeah,
mouthful.
y'all
Yeah.
got y'all got a lot going on, man. Okay. All right, cool.
Right.
Awesome, awesome. And real quick, is there any like so I know like some certification, depending on the industry, there's like a amount of time that you have to work in that particular industry before you I don't know if it's like continuing education or hey, you have to be in this role for like
Oh
six
yeah.
months. Is there any kind of requirement like that for Security Plus and the CISSP, sir? Do you know?
Yeah, Security Plus is very loosely defined. I think on paper it's like 2 years, but realistically, a lot of people are coming in. They're doing a career transition. They'll get a Security Plus within a few months,
Okay.
and be able to kind of get started from there. It's definitely harder for people who don't have some kind of IT background to do that. And so having, if you have 2 years experience, it definitely makes it easier. CISSP has a 5 year industry experience requirement, 4 years if you have a lower tier certification like a Security Plus.
Okay.
Um, but again, typically, people kind of overthink this a little bit.
Hmm.
Typically, if you're working around computers as part of your day job, and I don't mean like you're HR or something and you just log into a computer every day, right? But if you're like IT, or you're having to configure things on your computer or something like that, you're going to meet you're going to meet the requirements after 4 years, 4 or 5 years for CISSP.
Okay.
A lot of people think it has to be dedicated security experience, and it's not like that at all.
Okay.
It's really general IT with like a sprinkling of security.
All right. I got you.
All right.
Hey, I appreciate you for breaking that down.
That's
Let me go back even further. So like you kind of said, hey, if somebody's just starting out, look at Security Plus and CISSP. There might be somebody watching this that doesn't even like, and I, to be honest, I'm talking about myself a little bit here, doesn't even
Sure.
fully understand like the difference between IT and cybersecurity. And not only the difference between the two, but like, what do you do like in a day? Like, are you using Linux? Are you
Mm.
like installing antivirus software? Like what's going on in a day to day for like IT professional or cybersecurity professional? And I know those might be two different questions,
Right.
but what can you kind of like talk a little bit about like the day to day first for an IT
Yeah,
and
yeah.
cybersecurity
No, that's a
professional?
really good question, and people really do confuse us a lot. To the point where, I mean, people, it used to be, it's a little bit less so now, but people used to think that software developers were IT, and vice versa. It's like,
Wow.
no, there's really not that much relation between those career fields, other than the fact that we all work primarily with computers. Um, so I would, starting with IT. So IT used to be, I administer a single computer. Back in the '90s and early 2000s, it was like I go around and manage single computers, or maybe a network of computers in some of the more advanced environments. And so that is like the people who set up your computer when you start a new job,
Yeah.
in any large corporate environment. Those are IT people. They help you with getting all your software in your computer, getting all your passwords, your user accounts. That's like the beginnings of IT, and it of course ranges from that all the way up to cloud enterprise, network enterprise, um, even like your more senior systems people who are building out data centers that serve thousands of people, right? All of that is IT work, right? And
Yeah.
so it's hard to say, excuse me, like there's really no limit to it. Like you can start out as a entry level help desk person, which is where a lot of people get into IT, and that's the beginning of the stuff that I already talked about, all the way up to, like I said, your systems administrators working at Google who are servicing Linux servers that that serve millions of people, right?
Hmm.
That's still IT. Now, granted, it's weird because there's a lot of software development that's creeping into IT, and so that's where you start to get what they call DevOps, which is basically like it's IT, it's software developers with a little bit of like operational flavor to them. And when we say ops,
Okay.
that's what I mean, like traditional IT. Cybersecurity is the people who are responsible for making sure that all the stuff that the IT people put together is secure, right? And there's so much to that. It's really hard to like pin it down as to what you do on a daily basis. Um, the way I try to use like analogies like to the physical space, right? And then one that I typically use is like a military base. So a lot of people may not get this reference. I'll try to use like a physical building, right? Um, so so your IT people, if you think about like a physical building versus like your cyberspace, right? So the IT people will be the ones who build the building, who
Hmm.
do all the plumbing, the electricity, the roofing, the all that infrastructure that allows the building to exist. That would be IT. The security people would be the ones who come in, put the locks on the doors, put cameras in, monitor all the traffic in and out of the building, set up like response systems so that somebody is detected in the area that they're not supposed to be, somebody can actually go and respond to that instance, right? So like that's kind of how you think about the difference. Like, IT people, in some organizations, IT is like I said, it and forget it kind of thing. Like the IT people set up the environment, they kind of leave it, they go and do their own thing, and then they just do a little bit of regular monitoring to make sure everything is working how it's supposed to be working. But security is like a constant thing because you constantly have to monitor to make sure that the bad guys are on the outside and the good guys are on the inside, right?
Yeah.
Simplified.
Okay. Man, no, I
Mhm.
appreciate you breaking it down. And that's a perfect
Right.
analogy. I was taking a look at Boecore and their website, and it seems like things are going good. This is like a weird environment we're at where like inflation
Right.
is high, interest
Oh
rates are
yeah.
high, tech companies are laying people off. But I look on y'all's website, y'all got like 68 job openings at the moment, like according to
Yeah.
my last count.
Yeah.
And I'm like, things must be going good. So that is great. I'm really excited for that. And I've been sharing the website with some people. But for people that are like looking at these different job requisitions on the site, what are some
Mhm.
tips that you would recommend for them not only just applying but actually getting an interview and then hopefully landing the job? Is there any kind of tips or advice that you would recommend for people?
Yeah, and it's not going to be something people are going to be happy to hear, but it is what it is, right? It helps to know somebody. That's just the way it is,
Yeah.
right? Like it helps to know somebody that can help you sort of cut through the red tape, who can give you because there's this handoff that happens with every application, every resume that comes into a job environment, right? Where um, there's usually for Boecore, we have I can't think of like the best way to describe her, but she's like a community sort of outreach type person. Her name's Allie Smith, and she goes out and she's a part of the recruiting team, but her job is different in that sense. As part of her job is getting the Boecore name out, and going out and being that sort of first contact for people with the company, right? She goes to tons of different like veterans events and tries to get to meet people and everything like that, right? So she'll be like the first contact, right? And then, the typically your second contact will be the actual website where you go and
Mhm.
apply for jobs. One tip I would say, um, apply directly to a website, right? Like to the extent possible, avoid using like Indeed or LinkedIn or whatever.
Yeah.
Like if a company's advertising on Indeed or LinkedIn, like go find that job on their website. That there's just that one more step that you don't have to go through now, right? To get your application seen by an actual person.
Okay.
Um, so that like, and then usually recruiters, one of the things they want to know is, does anybody in the company know this person? Do the hiring managers know this person? Like, who is this person, right? To the company, and that if people know who you are and have a favorable opinion of you, um, then it's that much easier to get a job. Now, that's not gonna be possible for everybody. And so the other thing that is again the thing that is probably true, but that people don't like to hear is if you are applying online and the company doesn't know who you are, you're competing against, you know, depending on the position, sometimes you might be the only candidate. Sometimes you
Yeah.
might be one of dozens of candidates, right? It just really depends on the position. Typically, the more senior the position, the less candidates we have for it. Um, But if you're looking at those entry and early mid-level jobs, typically you're going to be competing against dozens of people. And so if whoever the people who get the job are typically they're borderline overqualified for the job. That's just the way a lot of the businesses work, right? But I would say, if you come in and you're genuinely like at the top of that job, oftentimes it's great to just come in, get your foot in the door, and then start figuring out ways within the system to move up. For people, especially who are on the outside looking in, you know, I say the most important thing, again, going back to the separation between your job and your career, the most important thing is getting the job, right? Like
Yeah.
if you got a family to feed, or just yourself, you got
Yeah.
bills to pay. What you don't want to do is be so attached to building your career that you're forgetting about like I got to pay my bills. I got to get my job needs taken care of. I got to get my financial needs taken care of. So networking, right? I hinted at this earlier, but for real, networking is huge. It's another one of those things I overestimated early in my career. You mentioned mentoring. Most of the people that I mentor are people that just come up to me at networking events, and they see a thing like this and they're like, hey Jeremiah, like I saw you on Andrew's podcast, I saw you at the Veterans Beer Club, I saw you at OWAS, I saw you at all these different events. Like I just wanted to come have a conversation with you and find out like what you're doing and like how to get a job like one that you got.
Yeah.
I work with guys. I wish I could have them on. They'd be happy to be on here. I work with a lot of guys who, when I met them, they were making 30, 40,000 a year, and 2, 3 years later, they're comfortably in the six figures. And I can't take credit
Nice.
for all of that, right? They have to go and do the work. They have to go get the education. They have to get the certifications. They have to do the networking and all that. But like when you network, you meet people. They help show you the path, right? They help you get inside the door. They help you break down those barriers that seem insurmountable from the outside.
Nice. Man, no, I appreciate you for breaking that down. And it seems
Right.
like I don't know why, but I get the feeling that there's like a lot of veterans in the cybersecurity space, IT space. Is that the case? I'm just curious.
Oh yeah, 100%. So there's two elements to it, right? For me, right, I work in the defense industrial base, right?
Yeah.
So naturally, I'm going to be surrounded by people whose backgrounds are in defense. They're veterans. But the other part of it is commercially, commercial companies didn't really care that much about security. It's kind of like
Uh,
the internet was not designed. The internet is not inherently secure. Most of the protocols that the internet runs on are open protocols. They were meant for open communication. Um, I don't know. I'm not an internet historian, but I have a hard time imagining that people, who were developing this stuff in the 80s and 90s really imagined the scale to which the internet would dominate our lives today.
okay.
And so, so even as late as I would say the early 2000s, the commercial industry was not really that invested in security. They were
Yeah.
all still trying to figure out how to make money off of this new thing called the internet. And so there's this natural tension that exists between like moving fast, figuring out how to monetize something, right? Getting a product out that people will love and use, and
Yeah.
then adding the security to it. Because security, if we're just being honest, like security is an impediment, right? Oftentimes it slows down operations because in order to slow down bad guys, sometimes you have to slow down the good guys too, right?
Mm,
Just a perfect example, right? A secure bank account requires you to have a username, a password, and then multi-factor authentication. Whether it's your phone, your fingerprint, or something like that, right?
yeah.
Those are three pieces of information that you have to have in order to access your phone or access your bank account, right? But you want those things in place to provide security so that you're the only person that can access your bank account and not somebody else. But that slows you down, right? And
Gotcha.
so a lot of commercial organizations weren't that invested in it. DoD, the NSA, the Department of Homeland Security. I mean, all these guys. I was recruited to the NSA out of high school, man. Like they've been looking for like they break code. Like that's what they're like a big
Okay.
part of their job is, right? And they were doing this stuff, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Like you go back to like anything like pre 1995 that has security on it, it's coming from like National Security Administration. It's coming from DoD. It's coming from these federal organizations, because that's where all the security focus was. Because
Gotcha.
we knew back, or they knew. I said we. I was too young to be in the DoD in 1995, right? But they knew back then that like, bad guys on the other side of the ocean were going to be trying to get at their information, and so they
Yeah.
needed to secure it.
Okay. Two reasons why I kind of asked that. One was because like when you mentioned networking events, I was thinking like what particular networking events should people be going to? You did mention like a veterans meetup or something like that. Are there
Yeah,
like any like
I mentioned that because
organizations?
of the community that I'm in.
Okay.
To be, let's be fair, right? Like the biggest investment in cybersecurity now is coming out of Silicon Valley, right? There's no military base near San Francisco, Silicon Valley, right? So you can definitely. It's not like you have to be a veteran in order to get started in these events. I would say, on a global scale, the best events are Black Hat and DEF CON, OWASP type events. My buddy's running a local OWASP chapter. OWASP is Open Web App Security Project.
Okay.
Like the old school traditional, like, you know, uh, I hate to say it, but the kid in their mom's basement that, are hanging out on, this old hacker site called Alta Vista, I think. No, that was a search engine. We had like these old school like hacker websites like on the internet way back in the 90s, early 2000s. Nowadays these guys are hanging out. I mean, they're hanging out on the dark web and doing all kinds of stuff. Discord and
Uh,
Telegram is their clear net ways of getting a lot of this information, for the offensive security minded folks. And there's also a whole bunch of folks who are like defensive security. So defensive security is kind of like what I've done my whole career, where you're protecting your networks against
yeah.
guys who are out there trying to access your networks. I'm probably not the best representative there. I haven't gone to a lot of the big events, but you could like for sure Black Hat and DEF CON are like the two top industry events, that most people in the security space are going to be aware of.
Okay. Nice, nice, nice.
Mhm.
Man, so we've covered a lot already. One thing I do want to get your insight on, it's one thing to get like recruited or to get your foot in the door or breaking into tech, but then in terms of like progressing your career, what would you say is like whether it's a mistake or a lesson that you've learned or a piece of advice that you would give for others who they're in the space, but now they're a mid-level, but they want to take their career to the
Mhm.
next step? What's something that you kind of noticed either separates those individuals that are super successful in that space or that's helped you be successful in making that jump from like mid-career to director or senior level?
Well, there's two things I want to cover real quick, and I'll be quick about it because I know we're running out of time. But one of the things that I talked about the certification, talked about education. One of the things I feel remiss in not mentioning is the best people in this career field are practitioners. Like they're
Okay.
keyboard warriors. I mean, they spend a lot of time hacking, or figuring out how to defend networks. They set up their own networks at home, things like that. I definitely don't want to undersell how important that stuff is. It just may not necessarily be the thing that gets you that first job, right? So that's kind of where our focus has been. And for the top tier cybersecurity professionals, they are hands on 100%. My buddy just put on that OS event, and we met a guy who's he's a director of security for Ubisoft, the big
Yeah.
gaming
Video
giant,
game. Yeah.
right? And the dude, like, he gave his presentation. He basically told us how he hacked his way into like the top job, right? He did all this
Wow.
like open source intel on Ubisoft and find out all their networks and how to act. He didn't break into them, right? But he showed them basically a map of their networks and how he would break into them if he did. And they're like, yeah, we definitely want you on the inside and not the outside, right? So
Okay.
I have undersold that up to this point, and I want people to know that is definitely needs to be a component of like your training, right? As you
Yeah.
look to break into this career field. Now to get at your question, for the mid career people, what separates the ones who kind of get stuck at that entry level versus the ones who continue to move up? The biggest thing, honestly, is the hacker community, the cybersecurity community. We tend to be pretty introverted. We tend to think that our work should speak for ourselves and things like that, and tend to be pretty terrible at self promotion. Tend to be
Mm,
terrible at doing stuff like that, going on podcasts, going out, organizing an industry event, participating in an industry event, networking, mentorship. The more of those things you can sort of add to your pile of like, look at the cool stuff that I've done, the more likely it is that you're going to get promoted. If you're the best hacker in the world, but nobody knows who you are, right? You can't get hired off of that. But if you're the second or third or 10th best, and everybody who comes, within 10 feet of you recognizes you as this great hacker, right? You're going to get the job.
mm,
And so you have to find a way to make your work visible. That's probably the single most important piece. And that doesn't mean you got to be, one of these guys who's always like out in the community, always doing
bragging.
something, right? But you also can't, sit behind the screen and hack all day and expect people to come to you. It just doesn't work like that. I think that's probably the biggest piece. And then
Yeah.
also what I would say is don't hesitate to take an interview. So something I do, and I've done I continue to do this. I've done throughout my career since I really got focused on my career. I I have coffee with recruiters. I have coffee with senior managers in different organizations. I go to network events. I sit down. I have conversations with people. I want to find out what's going on in their business. I want to find out is there a way that I can help you, right, without obviously violating my own employment agreement with my employer, right? Is there a way that I can help you in some way? Can I send you some new recruit, some kid that I know is coming out of college who I think is
Mm,
excellent, who's a good fit for you? Finding ways to help other people is also a big way. So the two things I would say: be visible in your community, right, and help other people.
got
You
you.
know, at the end of the day, right, your executives, what are they responsible for? They're responsible for representing their company well, making sure that company makes money, right? And the way that the company makes money is by providing value, by helping other people get what they need, right? And so we sell a product or a service that fills a need. So at the end of the day, your top people, their primary job is helping others, right? And I know that sounds a little woo woo, right? But that is a big part of it, right? One of the things that as I've gotten further in my career that I completely, so again, I completely misjudged how important this was having a a vision for what you want your career to be and a mission that supports it, right?
Mm,
Um, so I just this past week I sat down. I have a career coach. I sat down and went through this process of creating a vision for what I wanted my work life to be like. I created a
yeah.
mission, and so my vision is who do I want to be? Like, how do I see myself? Like, actually visualize myself being in 5 years. And the mission is what are the things that I'm going to do along the way that's going to help me get there. It's going to help my company get to where it needs to be. Going to help my colleagues get to where they need to be. Like having that kind of stuff in place to help you figure out like where it is I'm going. Right, having a plan for that is just it's just so important. I can't overstate like how important it was to figure out that like if I'm going to be a leader in this community, I need to have a mission and a vision that resonates with myself first and then with other
Yeah.
people as well.
Man, no, that's key because it's like if you how do
Right.
you know where you're going if you don't have that
Right.
like that compass for like what you want to accomplish, what's important to you, what's your purpose for your career. So I think that's really important. Man, no, a lot of great advice. I want to bring it back full circle. I got like two quick questions for you about your
Sure.
current role. Um, One, you're a director. Let me go back to the official title.
Sure.
The
Sure.
director of capture management. Well, you already kind of told us what that is, but I think a lot of people look at like these director, BP level positions and they're like, okay, I want that title. But a lot of times they may not know what comes with that. So like what's kind of like a day in a life like for you? Are you working like 60, 80 hours a week? Or is it like 40 hours a week? Is it like highly stressful or is it manageable?
Man, it's all of the above.
Okay.
So the biggest difference between it's not people get hung up on the hours worked and this and that, blah blah. It's not that. It's that other people are dependent on you. right?
Mm,
If you fail to perform, not only do you suffer, but other people's careers suffer, right?
okay.
And there's just this weight that you carry around that's like, hey, I have to do my job well. Otherwise, my company won't meet its goals. The I hate not subordinates, but colleagues, right? Like they won't be able to get their promotions. They won't be able to get where they need to go in the company, right? And so
Yeah.
you can't get away from it, right? Because you have that, it's always there with you. So that's why you see these executives putting in these long hours, right? It's not that like they just want to go work a whole bunch of hours and this and that. It's like, no, like the best ones are thinking, man, if I don't do this,
Yeah.
like, Johnny and Samantha and Aaron and Alex, these guys are going to lose their jobs. I don't want to wake up next year, not having, not having my colleagues working next to me because I failed to perform. Right. So
Mm,
that's the biggest difference. It's, like the workload. I would say my workload has gone up substantially from where I was, as a
okay.
cyber guy, but that has more to do with the fact that I think that I made a career transition,
Yeah.
in moving from, cyber to business development. So I'm like learning the job as I'm doing it. But the biggest stress has come from that responsibility for other people, for sure.
Okay. Second to last question for you. And this one, I want you to give some advice based on your current role. So
Mm,
somebody may have their own startup IT consulting or cybersecurity business. Maybe they're looking at RFPs for like a local high school or college or
mhm.
something. What advice would you give them for like how to secure that bid or that proposal?
People buy from people.
Okay.
Like having a great proposal is super important, don't get me wrong. But you can't deliver a great proposal without knowing what the customer really wants, like what keeps them up at night, what gets them excited to get up in the morning. How much are they willing to pay, what's their real budget,
Yeah.
who's counting on them, like who do they got to satisfy, do they got to satisfy their boss, is there some community organization that's really pushing one way or another, who are the other stakeholders, like you can't, none of that stuff is going to come out in the RFP. The only way to get that information is by talking to people. So, like this, at the end of the day, all sales jobs are people jobs. The where you get there, the little piece of paper you get at the end, proposal, RFI, quote, whatever it is,
Yeah.
that's the last little piece of it. Like you can you can lose work from submitting a poor bid, but you typically can't gain work from submitting a great one, right?
Mm,
Without having had that human connection first.
okay. What one quick follow-up. In this
Um,
scenario, what would you recommend for getting to know the person behind the RFP?
you gotta be where they are.
Yeah.
Like you gotta find out where they are. And you gotta go there. So like tonight, there's a big event, that the city's hosting. Um, and it's like a Western wear kind of like event, right? I'm not a cowboy. I grew up in the South. I did grow up in horse country, but like my family didn't have money to own horses or anything, right? But you know what? I'm gonna go. I'm gonna make an appearance. I'm gonna have a good time. I'm gonna connect with people. I'm gonna find out, what it is that they're doing, right? And
Yeah.
then seeing if there's an opportunity to connect and build a relationship and maybe do business some point in the future, right? Nobody's gonna come to you, right? Unless you're Apple, right?
Of course. Yeah.
Like right. So you gotta go where those people are. There's not like a single tip that I can give you that's gonna help because it's so different. Like if you want to talk to people in the schools, go to the open events that you could go to. Go to a PTA event. Go to a football game. Go to, where is it that you're likely to run into those people that are doing the work every day, right? The people who are doing the work will help you find the leaders, right? That's the other part of it too. Is don't just focus on the leadership, right? Focus on everybody. Get
Mhm.
who's going to be using your products, who's going to be using your services. Find out what they like and what they don't like, what they love about the current system, what they hate about it, and that's that much more information you'll have to take to the leaders when that opportunity comes, right? But you got to go where people are.
Gotcha. All right, man. Hey, I love it. Last question for
Yeah.
you. This one is a quick one. I mentioned the nearly 70 job openings right now at Boecore. of those jobs. Are you hiring for any one of those personally?
Yes,
Which
yes,
one? Let
yes,
the people
yes.
know. Let them know.
Super big on. There's certain on our website. They actually say there's certain class type of roles we're always hiring for. Security, cybersecurity, we're almost always hiring for. System administrators, we're almost always hiring for. Software developers, software developers, software developers. We just can't get enough software developers. Um, and our company is very heavily into space and missile defense. So, granted, those are military type backgrounds, right? But if you're like a really sharp uh, uh, somebody you're graduating from college, or you've got some industry experience in those areas, even if your like resume isn't a 1-to-1 match, I would say if your resume is a 30 or 40% match for a job, man, fire it over. You'd be surprised, right? So we're definitely hiring. I didn't get to all the different, you asked me to put together a list of some of the internship type things. I will say real quick that Colorado Springs, the city that Boecore is located in, has made some real efforts over the years to, I mean, just generated so many programs for people to come in. One of the most interesting ones they just started up 2 years ago was we are actually housing interns for different companies at one of the local colleges, right, to help deal with affordable housing. So,
Oh,
it's
that's
like,
cool.
well, those college kids are gone during the summer anyway, right? So why not, so the businesses, I think, chip in some of that, to help offset some of the costs. But like, I was really cool for me to see that, because I know like our city is doing these really innovative things to try and make it easy for us to bring in talent. It's crazy. Like when I got here, 10 years ago, I explained about like Colorado Springs just wasn't doing a good job of attracting young people to the area. Now we got so many people coming in. Like we got to figure out like where we're going to put these people, right? And so just tons and tons of programs like that, tons of security boot camps, um, software development boot camps, IT boot camps, low cost, no cost, all kinds of different things. So there's a lot of opportunity out there. I know you're getting ready to close up, so I'll say, probably the easiest way to get a hold of me and get some of these additional questions answered is, Jeremiah Walker on LinkedIn. I mean, see my face. I'll send you some. I'll send you some information, right, that you can drop in your show notes, right, so people can find me and shoot me some emails or something like that there, because that's the easiest way just to find out. I got a whole list of stuff, man. The city and the veteran community, the defense industrial base, and we are working really hard to get people out. Get people jobs. Like I know people are talking recession, recession, recession. My experience is, like the recession. I don't think Colorado Springs and the defense industrial base is going to be hit too hard. And knock on wood.
Yeah.
There's so many jobs available right now. There's so many jobs available. I just don't I can't see a situation where we get all those jobs filled in the next 2 years. So
Nice.
it's a great time to be a cyber guy for sure. For a guy.
Awesome. 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 Awesome.
Right.
And so which one of those roles are you hiring for specifically? Are you hiring for the cyber roles, or is that for a different department per se?
Right. So I don't do any hiring myself.
Oh,
I'm on the
okay.
sales side now. So I go out and win contracts, and then we have what we call
Gotcha.
program managers. They're the ones who are responsible for the hiring. I will say that our hottest program right now is GBSD. GBSD stands for ground based. Oh man, I don't remember the last two. Basically, it's kind of wild. It's a government program to replace intercontinental ballistic missiles, like the nuke holders, man. It's a big program. A lot of
Oh, wow.
software development, a lot of engineering type folks on that program. And we got locations in Utah, Huntsville, Alabama, Colorado Springs. It's going to be a massive program. A lot of work here in Colorado Springs surrounding the Missile Defense Agency as well. Again, a lot of software folks, anybody with missile defense space experience.
Okay.
So I just encourage people to apply. Like don't
Yeah.
the big thing I would say is, like um, the the majority of people that we hire are not going to be are not going to meet 100% of the requirements, right? That's just not feasible for most of our hires. If you're close, you're 40%, 50%, 60%, send a resume in, get an interview. That the interview is what puts you over the top, right? So don't hesitate to submit an interview if you're in that space where for people that we're looking for sure.
Gotcha. Now you got to shoot your shot. Like don't discredit yourself. Don't disqualify yourself. Let the employer do that. So I
Yes,
mean, uh,
100%, 100%.
exactly. All right. Great. Hey, one quick follow up. Are these positions primarily based in Colorado Springs, or any of them like remote, or what?
So we mostly are in Colorado Springs because of the work we do is often like sensitive in nature. Requires
Yeah.
oftentimes requires security clearance. That requires working on the government site. So I know I'm a big work from home. I'm working from home right now, right? A big
Yeah.
remote office person. We try and be flexible in those areas where we can, but not every job allows for that. It's just
No,
a government
that's
requirement,
understandable.
right? Mhm.
That's understandable given you guys are working for the DoD. So I mean, it's like, yeah, it's
Right.
at a certain point, you know. Hey, but good stuff, man. I've had a blast talking to you, learning about your journey. I feel like this is like a master class in itself of like how to get into cybersecurity and how to have a successful career. And I think
Awesome.
one of the main takeaways, real quick, it just seems like for an industry or for a field that's like so technical and like so hands-on, that you still is like just as equal of an importance on like the soft skills and getting to know the people and everything and the networking and all that and the mentorship. So I think at the end of the day, everything is a people business. So I think it's really good to hear you say the importance of networking, mentoring, getting involved, promoting yourself, all those things that kind of go into
Absolutely.
helping you have a successful career. But man, I've had a blast. If you watching this, I hope you enjoyed it.
Right.
Jeremiah, I want to give you a chance real quick. Any last words or any other thing you want to add before we close it out?
No, I just want to say, man, I appreciate everything you're doing here. I'm a big believer in mentorship. I love the company I work for, Boecore. I think we're out there doing great things, and I love the city of Colorado Springs. I've been here for 15 years. It took me a while to kind of learn to love it, but it's a great place. Anybody who's out there who's thinking about a move, who's wondering if hey, could Colorado be right for me? Man, come give it a shot. It's a great place to be. 100%.
Okay. Yeah, I was watching some of the Boecore videos on YouTube, and I saw somebody like I think he was on a basketball court, and you got like the mountains in the background. I was like, yo, that's
Oh
pretty
yeah.
cool. It looks like a painting, but
Yeah, it's
I don't
every
know.
day, man. Every day we get to experience that. It's kind of wild. Yeah.
Nice. Hey,
Yeah.
well, thanks again, Jeremiah. I really appreciate it. To you guys, I appreciate you guys watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. As always, we'll see you all next week, and I hope you have a good time. Peace.
Great. Thanks, Andrew.